Good evening, everybody, and welcome into episode 14 of the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League podcast here on gshow.ca and gshow Productions. I'm your host, Graham, the gshow Forsyth. Glad to be here for a bit of a different MMJHL podcast for this week. This edition of the show is pre-recorded since we will be in St. Vital Centennial Arena coming up at 8:30 p.m. tonight to call the remainder of a rescheduled game between the St. Vital Junior Victorias and the Pembina Valley Twisters. But before that, we got a bunch of great stuff in store for you all on this week's edition of the MMJHL podcast, brought to you by Make Cannon Fasteners and Tools. Visit their store locations in Brandon and Winnipeg today to check out your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs. Also, check out their website at makecannonfasteners.shop for more information. We're also brought to you by Terrico, serving Manitoba producers for over 80 years in the agricultural industry. Be sure to check out their website, terrico.ca, for more information. And to goaltenders, thank you to them for sponsoring this week's edition of the podcast, as always, in your goalie's personal video review service. Be sure to check out their website if you are in need of a goaltending coach today, GordyTummelsonGoalies.ca. Let's take a look at the standings first off before we get into who the guest is in this week's episode. The two teams to clinch at this point, the St. James Junior Canucks have locked up first place for another year in the MMJHL standings. Pembina Valley has clinched second place. It's pretty wide open still in terms of who's going to get that last playoff spot. Now it looks like it's coming down to the Railer Express, Stonewall Jets, and of course Fort Garry Twins tied with Transcona in terms of the stats there. But I'd say just looking at that goals for differential, that much more offense, I feel like has been a benefit for Fort Garry down the line here in the season. And yeah, in terms of the games that have been played in this past week, we saw teams getting big wins. Of course, St. James grabbing that huge one on Friday against Stonewall, and then of course coming away with that 4-1 victory against River East for the St. Boniface Riels. Their 3-game winning streak snapped against the St. Vital Junior Victorias in a shootout loss on Friday, but the Riels weren't fazed by that, responding with a 4-2 win against a very good opponent in the Charleswood Hawks this past Sunday. Only 2 games remaining here in the February schedule, then we're off to March. Yesterday, Fort Garry ended up losing to Stonewall, so that's why those standings are even tighter now at this point in the season. And of course, Pembina Valley up 3-0 with 2 periods left over St. Vital heading into tonight's matchup that can be seen on gshow.ca, of course. But before we get into that, gonna bring on the guest for this week's episode of the MMJHL podcast, Ashton Howarth, goaltender of the St. Boniface Riels, played all of his career in the MMJHL with the River East Royal Knights until he got traded during the trade deadline this year, during Christmas break at that. I had a chance to ask Ashton about what his time was truly like with the River East Royal Knights. He gets into how thankful he was for everything that organization was able to do to him. We get into the emotional aspect as well of him, you're going to be suiting up in his final regular season game ever in the MMJHL for himself against River East. Coming up this Sunday, and yeah, also talked about his time so far, what it's been like playing with a very good St. Boniface Riels team. You're not going to want to miss it coming up on episode 14 of the MMJHL podcast with Ashton Howarth, goaltender of the St. Boniface Riels, joining the show now. Number 31 of the St. Boniface Riels, Ashton Howarth, joining this edition of the MMJHL podcast. Ashton, you started off your season, of course, with River East, spent your whole career there up until the trade. Take me back to the day it happened. Pretty huge one, seeing you and your teammate that's now with you, of course, still, and Aaron Nielsen, go into the Riels from the Knights.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a crazy day. It was on Christmas holidays, actually. I was on a family event. And I got a text and phone call, and they said, "Hey, you're going to the St. Boniface Riels. Thanks for all your time." And so it was a lot of emotion at once. Playing for the River East Royal Knights for 4.5 years, and then making the big switch. So I got the call, and got a couple phone calls from the Riels staff and management, and they welcomed me on board with open arms. And I got a call from the Knights manager and stuff too, and he thanked me for everything. It was really good, and it went really well. So I was really happy it happened.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, 4.5 years spent there and having your biggest season last year. Just take me back to that moment, though. You very aware, of course, playing with that franchise, knowing the struggles they had gone through leading up to that season, to be able to be a huge part of that, to have that success last year. What was that like for yourself, finding some new success in the league?
Yeah, last year was huge. River East was in a bit of a slump for a while, and I had come in at a very young age, 17. So there was a little bit of pressure on me and some other guys to hopefully start a rebuild in that case. Um, it didn't really get going until last year when we had a lot of new guys come in and young guys and skilled guys. Um, and by then I was already a fourth year vet, so I knew the league a little bit. So yeah, I tried to play my best for them, and everything was just clicking last year, and we ended up second and didn't do great in the playoffs, but made the playoffs, which was huge for us, and it was a great booster. So yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, and seems like it's very likely that you'll be back in the playoffs with a chance to, potentially go on a deeper run this year with the Riels team. That's been really good. But for yourself, I mean, when you first joined the team, started off with, a win in there, but had some losses as things have really picked up, though. I mean, you haven't lost in your last like 6 or 7 games with the team. So talk about what it's been like getting comfortable and getting just used to the environment there to be able to thrive the way you are right now with a 9.23 save percent or 9.26 save percentage so far since joining the Reals.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a tough start. I think it was the first 5 or 6, 7 games was a little bit rocky. I think it was just a little bit of chemistry to build with the team. It's always a big change when you go on a break and then new guys come and guys leave. So I think it was just a bit of adjustments and bonding. And then once everyone started to really build the chemistry together, we started to really click, and it just started to have fun, because I think it was a little tense after with everything going on, and they're in second place when I got there, so there was a lot of stress on the line and stuff like that. So I think it was just building relationships, and that's what's really helped us, and we really come together as a team in this last month for February.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a huge move that they made to bring you and Aaron in. And yeah, it'll take a bit of time for all the pieces to adjust for the stars to align. And it seems really when it started to happen for this team to play at their best again was in that game against St. James, where you had a shutout in the 4-0 win. I was actually at that game, saw you make some ridiculous saves. But to have that game finally against a St. James team who you boys know is the top team in the league. How truly huge and special was that for that group and yourself in that moment?
Oh, it was something else. I played with a lot of the guys on that team growing up, with the Hawks in AAA and stuff like that. So it was good to get a shout against them. More so the win, the 2 points was the biggest thing. But yeah, I heard it was the first time they've been shut out in years. I didn't even know that. I heard it after the game, so that was exciting. I got a few nice texts from guys across the league and some coaches and stuff, and it was a really special moment for that. It was just a lot of fun. I remember beating them last year once, and that was huge. I believe we won like 8-4 or something like that. But this was a lot bigger, and it meant a lot for our team, to show that we can do that, and we can beat any team. So that's what we're going for.
Yeah, and this team has shown that throughout this season. But just want to get your thoughts on this. Like you said, playing against so many of those boys growing up, getting to play against competition you've played against before, and getting to play with players still that you've played with in the past. How cool has that been about the junior hockey experience throughout your time here in the MM?
Yeah, it's been awesome. Seeing a lot of guys from 7 years old to whatever, seeing them in the league on other teams, on the same teams. It's really fun just to see them all there again. There's guys coming down from the dub, the MJ2. So the league's gotten a whole lot better, and there's guys I know from there that come back, and it just makes the league so much more fun to play. And yeah, there's so many guys I crossed paths with throughout my entire life, and still playing against them it's just been really awesome, and it's always fun to see them, before the game and after the game, and have a good competition on the ice. I love playing the MM. It's just everyone who you've played with before is there, and it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I mean, just getting to cover it throughout all these years, getting to watch it. I mean, it is truly an underrated league. Yes, the MJHL is the top junior league here in the city, but a lot of great talent, even from the MJ, comes down to play in the MM, as you know, Ashton. But for this Riels team, I mean, third place, a huge weekend, dropping a close one in extra time to the Vicks on Friday, but responding with a big win this past Sunday. To still see that from this team, even when there is a loss in there, you boys don't seem to falter at this point. How huge is that to see that continuing to carry through, especially with playoffs on the horizon?
Yeah, we didn't really take the shootout to heart. It was a really great game, back and forth the entire game, and shootout's always 50-50. I think it went to 8 rounds or something like that. So at that point, it's just whoever gets the luckier goal wins. But that was a lot of fun to play that game, and I think we were happy we got the point out of that one, and we came back with 9 seconds left. Nate Hines, great player, came back and scored, and that got us really hyped up. So and then coming into Sunday, huge rivalry against Charleswood. They're a really great team too. Um, that was a battle too, and we came out on top, and that was huge for us. And it's just showing that it's a good time to become hot, especially after a little bit of a slump that we had.
Yeah, and I mean, teams go through ups and downs usually throughout the season, and to get hot at this time is definitely huge. It's definitely looking like that right now for this team, even with that shootout loss in there. But 3 games left in the season against, the Royal Knights, a former team, of course, that you played on before getting traded. Fort Gary coming up next, and the Raiders Junior Hockey Club to end off the year. These last 3 games, the mindset, I'm assuming, remaining the same, even though emotions, I'm sure, will be high in that game coming up against the Royal Knights for you and Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we got Twins Friday, which will be a huge one. They're hot too right now, so we got to be careful on that one and come strong. But yeah, Sunday will be my last regular season MM game. And it's kind of ironic, I played my last game as a Knight at Southdale, you know, right before the Christmas break, got traded, and then went to the Riels. And then now my last game ever for regular season will be in Southdale on the other side of the ice against the team that I've been with, the whole time. So there'll be a lot of emotions there, with the regular season ending, seeing the old team, seeing all the guys, coaches, staff, and everything like that. So it'll be a big one for sure.
Yeah, it's like things are kind of coming full circle at this point for yourself, Ashton. I mean, I'm sure the emotions, like we've talked about, are going to be super high coming up in that one. But last question to end off with you here. Obviously, this Reals team looking for a deep run, a team with a lot of experience from last year heading into this year, have added some big pieces. But as well as everyone else in the league and myself, that anyone can beat anyone out of these top 9 teams at this point. Knowing that, does that make it even more exciting, knowing what's ahead, the opportunity, knowing that this team is going to have to bring their best night in, night out to get to the ultimate goal for you boys, which is a championship at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been such a tight league from the start. Everyone's like a few points, away from each other all throughout the board pretty much. So I think what we're going into it is doesn't matter who we play. You know, if we were playing the top or bottom team to start the playoffs, it's gonna be a war either way. And that's gonna how it's gonna be through every round. So I think our focus is just, battle through the first round, hopefully make it through, and then battle the next one and the next one, and then just keep going until hopefully victory.
Yeah, it's gonna be a heck of a ride come this playoffs. These playoffs coming up, and gonna be exciting to see how far this Reals team can take it this year. Looking to improve off of last year's quarterfinals loss in the first round, of course, as an 8th seed against the Reals or against the Canucks. Going to be a lot different this time as they'll place higher in the standings. Ashton Howarth, number 31 of this Riels squad, joining the show as the first guest. Ashton, thanks for coming on, and best of luck to you and the team coming up.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
And Ashton Howarth, 6-4-3 this season with a shutout in his 13 games with St. Boniface. He has a .926 save percentage. His save percentage through 16 games with the Royal Knights prior to the trade was .899. He had a 3-9-1 record with them and 0 shutouts. And as for the standings in the league, showing you again, the Riels, despite dropping that shootout loss to St. Vital last Friday, they were able to earn a point, of course, and getting that win over Charleswood when Stonewall was able to help them out a bit by getting that win against St. Vital, allowed for the Riels to move up into third place heading into their final 3 games of the MMJHL regular season. And as for the upcoming games, as mentioned, the Riels taking on a very good Twins team down this second half ever since 2024. That one will be on the road for the Riels. They will be playing against Fort Garry at Century Arena that night. The Raiders Junior Hockey Club taking on St. James, Transcona taking on River East, Stonewall coming to Winnipeg, take on Charleswood, and for St. Vital, they play a back-to-back on the weekend, playing on Saturday against Pembina Valley once again, so they'll be playing Pembina Valley quite a bit in these next few days, but a game that can be seen on gshow.ca will be that March 3rd game on the Sunday as the defending champs square off against St. Vital, and G-Show Productions will also be live streaming the March 5th game between the Vics and the Charleswood Hawks. We're going to take it to a transition here, everybody, and once I come back, I am going to be filling you in on the point leaders as well as previewing what's coming up tonight in the Victoria's game against the Twisters, as Pembina Valley is up 3-0 with 2 periods to go in that rescheduled game. You're watching the MMJHL podcast, brought to you by McCann Fasteners and Tools Goaltenders, and of course, as you're seeing on your screen right now, Terrico, serving Manitoba producers for over 80 years in the agricultural industry. Be sure to check out their website for more details at Terrico.ca. Be back in just a moment, everybody. Well, you've made it to this point in the MMJHL podcast. Happy to have you all here still. If you had caught that interview with Ashton Howarth, it was great getting to talk to one of the most talented goaltenders in the MMJHL, a senior, meaning that, I guess senior may not be the right word, but going to be aging out after this season. He is a 2002 born player, so looking for one last kick at the can for himself at potentially getting to a championship or going on a long playoff run along with his teammates on this very impressive Riels team this season. And, going into some stats now, gonna take a look at how things are placing, where players are stacking up here, and I think it's safe to say that Tyrone Willen is going to be locking up the scoring title for a second year in a row. Willen led the league in points last season, so he'd earn that title back-to-back years. Peyton Bateman has jumped way up on this list, now in second. Really impressive season for him. Only 37 games played and 68 assists. Some usual suspects on this list still, of course. Rylan Huging, Tyler Rubany, and Dean Gorchinski tied with Rubany for points at 64. Rubany with one less game played than Gorchinski. Into the goals leaders, it's still Rylan Huging, but Tyler Rubany, 3 goals off of him, heading into the final stretch of games for this Victoria's team this season. Willen, Goodbranson, and Height all on this list too. As for the assist leaders, it's Willen, followed by Gorchinski. Whiteley still on this list in the top 3. looking like he has a good chance to get it unless Derek Weeb and Peyton Bateman go off in the assist category in these last few games of the season. And as for the goaltenders, it's still Noah Gilbert on top, but Logan Ends right behind him, only one win behind from tying Gilbert's season total. But Gilbert with 3 games last played, better stats overall, but Ends pretty darn close in all of these statistics. Back up to Gilbert, Connor Murphy in the middle of this list at 14 wins. Stewart and Paul's rounding out the list in the top 5 for wins in the league by goaltenders with 12 wins each. The only 2 goaltenders on this list as well with sub 900 save percentages. So yeah, that is your stats from around the MMJHL. In terms of what's coming up tonight, though, in the should be a good one. Twisters coming into Winnipeg to take on the St. Vital Junior Victorias to finish a game that's rescheduled from December. Only period 2 and period 3 will be played in tonight's matchup, and the reason for that was, well, back in December, the Zamboni at St. Vital unfortunately made a gash in the ice near the penalty box that made things unplayable. So yeah, a few months later, these 2 teams can finally finish this game, finish their business. Pre-game will be at 8:20 for tonight's matchup. Puck drops at 8:30, and yeah, I mean, looking at it, DeGrave scored 2 goals in that period, that opening period of that game. Colette also scoring. We'll take a look at the in-depth stats too. Colette actually opened up the scoring, and DeGrave ended up scoring his 15th and 16th of the time. Derek Weeb had an assist in this game, as well as Xander Carrolls, Riley Gertzen, and Cal Van Dyne. Shots ended up being 14-10 for Pembina Valley after that first period, and they were the less disciplined team for penalties to St. Vital's 1. I believe that St. Vital will actually be starting the game tonight, as in that second period, on the power play off of that high sticking from Derek Weeb. And in terms of where the season series has been at for these both teams, it's been in favor of Pembina Valley. If they can win tonight, they will secure the win in the season series, which would make it 3-1. If not, St. Vital, if they're able to come back tonight, they will be looking for their season series win against the Pembina Valley Twisters coming up on Saturday in that evening game in Morris, Manitoba. Be sure to check out G-Show Productions, though, tonight. It should be a very interesting game. It's going to be interesting to see how both of these teams play it. If St. Vital can get off to an early goal on that power play, or an early goal in this game, I think it should make things interesting. But if Pembina Valley can respond right back with a goal, say if St. Vital comes out and scores one, then, I mean, that kind of negates things, right? But, I mean, odd for these 2 teams. I mean, you're not preparing for a full game. You're only preparing for 40 minutes. So yeah, both of these teams, I think the most important thing is about finding good momentum, like in any game, and just riding that momentum for as long as you can. St. Vital looking for a big comeback. Pembina Valley looking for a win to, of course, secure the season series victory. If not, it could be split and heading into a determining game in that season series coming up this Saturday. But at the end of the day, both of these teams will be in playoff contention in terms of battling it out for potentially a championship come playoff time, as both of them will have their quarterfinals matchups set here within the next 2 weeks. G-Show Productions very excited for the MMJHL playoffs. We are going to be broadcasting as many games as we can from St. Vital, and maybe potentially looking at other arenas where we could live stream out of, so you don't miss any action from what should be a fantastic playoffs this year in the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League. But myself, Graham the G-Show Forsyth, I'm going to send it to one last transition here, and I'll be back here for some final words on this week's edition of the MMJHL Podcast. Stick around, everybody. Well, you've made it to the end of the MMJHL Podcast, everybody. I've been your host, Graham, the G-Show Forsyth. I want to thank you for tuning in to this one if you did. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications here so you don't miss any future uploads of this podcast and MMJHL content in general here on the network. We decided to do this episode a day earlier than we set it up on the schedule heading into this new calendar year of 2024. Everything has kind of been all over the place. We've been kind of scattered and inconsistent with our content schedule. And the reason for that is, well, I thought it would only make sense to post this podcast tonight, knowing there's MMJHL hockey. It's going to be MFHL game day tomorrow for the MFHL playoffs. We got a game 4 to call in Stonewall, and the MFHL podcast also has to get out. So thought it would only be fair, right, in my opinion at least, making that choice to air the MMJHL content on the same day as we're doing the game. Same with the MFHL podcast. That's kind of why I set the MMJHL podcast to Thursdays in the first place, is because there were so many Thursday games on the schedule. That was the case the start of January, but the Vics have played less and less Thursday night games as the season has gone along. But not complaining, happy to bring you guys all this great content still. I'm fired up for the MMJHL playoffs, everybody. You can be expecting an MMJHL article as well coming out on gshow.ca in the next few days here, previewing this upcoming week of action and also recapping last week's. We're going to have a playoff preview article for all the quarterfinals matchups coming up when that time does come. But before I end off the show, I want to thank Make Canada Fasters and Tools Terrico and Goaltenders for sponsoring this edition of another episode of MMJHL podcast content, and to Ashton Howarth. Thank you to him for coming on and being the only guest in this episode. Much appreciated. Ashton, was great to, of course, talk with you. But I'm gonna go, everybody. Get prepared for the upcoming game that we're doing tonight for these 2 periods at least. Could be seeing overtime tonight, potentially, between St. Vital and Pembina Valley. I don't know what's gonna happen. I'll leave your thoughts on what you think is gonna happen in that one. But until next week on, I'm thinking Thursday, we'll be back. Stay tuned for the details on gshow.ca as well as our social media pages. But I've been your host, of course, Graham the G Show Forsyth, giving you the salute, peacing out, and saying so long, everybody. Enjoy the game tonight if you tune in. Enjoy all the great MMJHL hockey coming your way this weekend, and have a safe and great one out there, everybody. Take care.